Hey guys, it's me Astrid, and today I wanted to show you how to mount yet another orchid because showing you lots of different examples I think is going to be pretty helpful, and I love to see lots of examples of things that I'm trying to learn how to do. So I'm going to show you how to mount an orchid. Now this orchid, this is just part of it, but this is the basically specimen or almost specimen size before I cleaned it up and got rid of some old pseudobulbs. It's almost that big of Encyclia Cochleata, which is properly called Prosthechea Cochleata, I believe. There's a lot of pieces down here that we're going to get to. First, you're going to need an orchid for mounting, and this is the one I'm going to show you how to mount today. It's rather large, so that'll be exciting. Yes, so you have your orchid. You need to have a mount. This is cork bark. These are called cork flats by ZoomEd. If you go to a pet store, you're much more likely to find this sort of thing for really cheap, sometimes cheaper than you can find at a plant nursery store if you go to the pet store. And this is just cork bark. The nice thing about cork bark is that it's not super water retentive and it's very lightweight. So if you have a big plant to mount, this is like nothing. Also, cork bark looks really natural, but you can mount orchids on a lot of different things, okay? Okay. Next, you need some sphagnum moss. I also get my sphagnum moss from ZoomEd, and so you get an idea of how compacted this bale is. Look how much I took out of this, and look what a big space it's taking up here. This does not fit back in this bag that easily, so if you do this, I'd say you get like 3 times the volume of this block when you pull it all apart. So it's compacted somewhat. They can really compact sphagnum moss really tightly down depending on the vendor, but this coming from this little corner being ripped open, not bad. Again, did I already mention scissors and thread? Because you're going to need some clear plastic thread and some scissors. We're going to get started, and I'm sorry if the way I sit bothers anybody. Sometimes people express that they are freaked out by the way my legs bend when I sit, but I've always sat this way my entire life. Don't panic, my legs are not going to break off. So here what we're going to do, we're going to take our string and we're going to just tie several knots down. We're just going to tie this string nice and tight on the back of this, and I'm sure it's a little bit challenging to see the clear thread. Like I said in my other video, that's sort of the point, though it might be difficult for illustrative purposes. So you see, I tied the string in a knot. I'm leaving this tail, and this is the thread. It's important to leave the tail so you can fish it out after we're done wrapping this and tie off the end. I find that's the easiest way to tie off your thread wrapping. So leave this tail. It's important, don't cut it short. I'm going to look how I want to place this on the mount before I start going to town on this. Also, I think I'm going to take off a couple more of these old pseudobulbs because I don't like them. Was that heartless enough for you? I don't know. Anyway, old pseudobulbs do give the plant energy, but some of them that are yellowing I don't really care for, and the plant already has a lot of pseudobulbs. I'm not too panicked about removing some, especially because a lot of the back bulbs here have dead roots. Look, where's the new growth on this plant? Well, this plant is growing from old to new this way. And additionally, we see a little baby growth right here. And we're going to be very careful, Astrid, that we don't break off another new growth while we're doing stuff to our orchids. Right, Astrid? Right. So we're going to position this plant so that it's growing with the oldest bulbs basically at the base of this, because this is going to be a fast-growing plant with the size it is. So it can grow kind of upward on the mount. We'll hang it like this. And we want to have lots of room for this to grow so this can stay mounted this way for several years. Additionally, I have 3 other parts of this plant that broke off while I was cleaning it up. So I'm going to find the newest bulb, which tends to be the one with the flower usually. So this is the newest bulb, it's the most forward one, and I'm going to position this somewhere like here. And then I'm going to take this division, which also has a new growth. Focus, little camera. And I'm going to put that new growth, I don't know, somewhere like right here. So this plant can be upright and growing all the way up this mount and fill it up and make it look like a really wonderful porcupine. We also, when I was taking this apart, someone must have put a little seedling In the mix, this is a teeny tiny little seedling, I think, so I'm going to try to put this on the mount and hope that it doesn't die. So let's get started with the mounting process. We kind of blocked out, we want a thing here, and something here. So we need to lay out our sphagnum moss as is appropriate. And as you can see, this sphagnum moss from Zoom Ed has some pretty long fibers. If you're potting Neophoenicias or something, this moss from Zoom Ed is pretty good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't even worry. But we're just going to lay kind of a thin layer of moss over everything because we want a moisture retentive layer that's going to hold on to that moisture after we water our orchid, which can be on a daily or twice daily basis in summertime. And I'm having hot weather lately that I hate, and I'm having to really tolerate it. My orchids are suffering too. Hold this thread in your hand and roll it out in your hand, because if you get this thread pulled like way out here and you're trying to wrap just the string with your hand, it gets really obnoxious. So just keep that spool of thread in your hand as you're wrapping your moss down. And what we're doing is we're just providing a basic layer of sphagnum moss, and we're anchoring it down just enough so it doesn't shift around as we place our plants. Now I'm going to hold this in my hand back here, and I'm going to put a little bit more moss over here because I want there to be a little more room back this way for my orchid to have some moisture. So I'm just going to do a couple more wraps to wrap those little pieces down. Now, depending on the orchid that you're mounting, you should do this layer thicker or thinner, though I wouldn't say to go like this thick ever. Of course, that depends on you and your growing situation, but in my situation it stayed too wet and it attracted fungus gnats. So it's better to go a little thinner and have to water more often than to have something that's too water retentive that gets a bunch of fungus gnats, because those guys are nasty. Alright, so I think what I'll do is I'm going to get these little divisions on first because they'll probably be easier to manage. So I'm just going to, I want this to stick out from the mount. So I'm going to hold it in place the way I want it, and I'm going between the pseudobulbs to ensure that it is anchored down nice and tight. So can you kind of see how I'm weaving this string through the pseudobulbs? And that'll help it be real sturdy. We want plants, our orchids, to have stability as they grow, because if they feel unstable, they might not give you good roots or good growth, and that's sad. Okay, so this is relatively stable. It has a lot of good roots, so I don't need to anchor it down too hard, but I'm just going to take a tiny bit of sphagnum moss and lay it over these roots so they stay hydrated. Because this is an Encyclia Cochleata and because they like to dry out between waterings, I'm going to keep a thin layer of sphagnum moss over the roots as opposed to a thicker one that I might use on an oncidium or maybe even a bulbophyllum. But this plant does like to dry out between waterings. So there's that extra little moss. Now we're going to get our other division and find our new growth again. So our new growth is, you see that little tiny growth right here? That is going to be pointed upward. We want it to grow upward on the mount. And I'm just going to get this as far to the base as I possibly can over here. And I'm going to go right between these pseudobulbs with the threads. I'm going between these two. And I'm wrapping and trapping the pseudobulbs. I'm wrapping between these two pseudobulbs. I'm going to zoom in up, you guys. Let's see how helpful that is. I hope it is. I'm just going to go over this division and go between these two pseudobulbs here. You see that? So what I'm doing is I'm just doing my best to make sure this plant is really stably attached to the mount. Because an unstable plant is, well, it feels unstable, so it might not grow as well as you might hope. I'm just going to go between this like this. It can't hurt to have really stably anchored. And there we go. So this one, now it just ever so slightly wobbly. I'm going to probably try to get it tighter down, but we're just going to take that little small layer of sphagnum moss right here and just add a tiny bit to keep these roots hydrated throughout the day. Now, for the big boy. For the big boy part of the plant. These are all the old pseudobulbs. You can see they're shriveled, they're yellowing tiny bit, they're wrinkly, they're smaller than these other pseudobulbs, you can see. So we're going to put these as close to the base of this mount as possible, because we want this plant to have all the room to grow up in this direction. Now this part admittedly is going to be hard to see. We're also pointing our new growth toward the top of the mount because this orchid is going to grow upward because that's how it would probably like to grow in a tree. Now this has a lot of roots and it's hard to see, but I'm trying to spread them as flat as I can get them under the plant. So we're just going to go flat as we can and as close to the bottom of this mount as we can. We can preview this, like say, okay, does this look good? Is this at a good angle? Does this plant have room to grow? We say yes. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to start wrapping this on, and this is probably going to be something we wrap a lot. Sorry, there we go. Sometimes even if you're using both hands and a tripod, figuring out how to get your mount like steady so you can wrap your plant is kind of a pain in the butt. Okay. So I'm just going to be as stable as possible to get this guy really stable down the mount. So you can see I'm kind of easing my way through this part. I'm rewrapping the other sections of the plant. And I'm just going to cut each layer of suitable, so I'd say. I'm kind of so I'm going to get splattered using these. These are slapping around. I call orchid views. Help! Okay, I'm going to go under here. Okay, so now if you can see, we have this section of roots here, and I'm going to go ahead and wrap those down too, though it may be a little bit difficult to show, but we're just going to go ahead and try. Okay, you'll see a tiny bit of sagging moss here. Just, damn fibers, why are you so long? Get out of there, let your moisture. Okay, so now we're ready to wobble test this plant, as I like to call it. A wobble test is just when you kind of wiggle the plant and see if it feels secure on this mount or not. And for me, this is feeling kind of secure. Oh, and we forgot our little dear friend, this seedling. So I'm just going to put this guy right here on the base. I'm going to put this little baby right on the base with some good sphagnum moss around the roots because we'll see what happens with this. I don't predict a great outcome, but I'm just going to keep this in a nice hydrated place where it will hopefully flourish. And we're just going to wrap this. So now we have all our things on here. None of these are feeling wobbly to me. They all feel secure on this mount. They're not, I could probably pull the mount up by any given pseudobulb, though that I'm not going to actually try that because that's not nice to my plant. You remember the tail I told you to leave on? Well, we're just going to kind of dig this out. Here, I found it. We're going to cut this thread loose. And we're just going to tie them together. Now, I don't typically see orchids wrapped as extensively as my orchids are wrapped on the mount. Some people just like barely tie it on with some, I don't know, hemp string, or I don't know what material they use. It looks like reeds or something. Some people tie it on minimally, but I like to be able to like strum musical ballads from the back of mine because it's like so tight and so developed. This is our finished mount of a very large Encyclia Cochleata. Now this plant is heavy. I'm going to be able to hang it up nice and high where it gets lots of sun. This plant is stable. It's not going anywhere. It's not shaking when I shake it. And when the new growths come out, what's going to happen is they're going to lay roots down and they're going to reach out and they're going to grab onto the mount and anchor the plant to the mount themselves. This is how they do it in nature. So this is a really great way to keep your orchids. Watering this, you just pour water over this. Don't worry about getting into the pseudobulbs. It can handle it. Especially an orchid like this doesn't really have anywhere for water to get trapped, so it should be all right. Yeah, this is my finished mount. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks so much for watching. Have a really nice day and happy growing. Bye guys.